On this episode of Game Shack, I review Arcade1up's Legacy cabinet for Pac-Man. Coming up next. Hey everybody, it's JDV from EvilGeniusEntertainment.com. Thank you for stopping by the Game Shack. It really does mean a lot to us. All right, well, let's just jump right on into this review of the Pac-Man Legacy game from Arcade1up, where I'm going to kind of go over the good and the bad and the ugly and ask whether or not you get good value for money for the $400 it costs. Now, one of the big differences between this game and the Pac-Man 40th edition game, which was actually the first Arcade1up game I ever bought and kind of got me into this hobby, is that this comes with a lit marquee, comes with 12 games, and it comes with a riser. Also, just like all of the other Legacy games that Arcade1up is put out, and that would be Street Fighter, Mortal Kombat, and Tempest, and I don't think Tempest has even been offered for sale yet. It comes with this sort of faux arcade door print on there. So let's talk a little bit about the fit and finish on this game. When you put it together, when you're all done constructing it, there really is a wow factor. That is something that Arcade1up, of course, is now famous for, is their ability to put out really slick looking, arcade realistic type games, and this game does not disappoint. The marquee is evenly lit and nicely bright. The screen is the most recent iteration of the screens from Arcade1up and is brilliant and plenty big enough for a one-person vertical game. I know at least Pac-Land is a horizontal game. I don't know if there are any other horizontal games on here, and that game plays okay. It's a little small, but most of these games are vertical, and a 17-inch screen is just fine for that. The bezel is nice. The control deck is nice. The only real difference between this and something like the 40th edition Pac-Man game is that all of these buttons are white, whereas before the fire button, the A button, would have been red. I'm not sure why they switched off of that. So overall, I think the fit and finish on this thing, it lives up to the other Arcade1up games. As noted, the game is a little bit smaller than other Arcade1up games, although you really hardly notice it on this particular unit because, and when I say smaller, I mean like a 1/4 inch to a 1/2 inch in any given measurement. It's about, I think it is almost exactly tall as my Space Invaders game. Control deck is a little bit smaller, I would say. That is where you're really going to notice it. But at least in terms of this game, so I'll turn it sideways here a little bit. So I'm 6'1", I'm in my stocking feet right now. It can kind of give you an idea of the size. So when I'm playing the game, I can actually get right up in here and I can still see all of the screen. Well, maybe not the words high score, but I can still see the entire screen standing up. Now that said, generally speaking, I would not play Pac-Man standing up. I wouldn't play any of these games standing up. I like to sit down when I'm playing this kind of game. Now, when you're playing a fighting game, you probably do want to stand up, but at least for this game, I would say if you're 6'1" or shorter, you ought to be able to stand and play the game without adding an additional riser. If you are taller than that, you probably will have a problem, but when you're sitting down in a normal stool, it's no problem at all. So I would say whatever the Legacy sizing issues are, they really don't exist for this game. Let's talk a little bit about building these machines. If you've never built an Arcade1up machine before, or any other kind of arcade machine before, it's basically as difficult as putting something together from IKEA if you've ever had to do that. I will say this about Arcade1up, they have one of the best construction manuals I've ever seen for any kind of product like this. So if you follow the directions and take your time, you should have no problem. Mine came very well packed and almost flawless. There's a tiny little divot there, and the plexiglass itself came a little roughed up. It's not a big deal, but the other plexiglasses I've had, deck protectors, came flawless, so I'm not sure why mine was like that, especially because it was covered on both sides with film. I'm guessing this is a relatively rare thing. In terms of the artwork itself on the cab, it kind of reverts back to the older style where you see the yellow instead of the wood grain that was on the 40th anniversary. And you have the Pac-Man theme riser. All of it works together. It is all a very slick package, and the fit and finish on this game is fantastic. Well, let's talk a little bit about the other big addition to this game, other than the fact that you're getting 12 games, and that's the fact that you can go into the menu system and change out the difficulty setting. You can change the number of lives that you have, and most importantly to most people, you can turn off the pixel smoothing feature that for some reason comes enabled on other games. Glad to say you can take that feature off, and when you do, this game sharpens up brilliantly. It just looks absolutely fantastic to me. The other emulations of all the games are really good. One of the things that you cannot control though is you cannot map the buttons. I would rather have the fire button, the A button, be over here. I don't know if that's arcade real or not, but I would just like it to be over here because I would like to be able to fire with my left hand and control the joystick with my right. And there's a multitude of reasons why people might want to do that. They have arthritis, they have, something damaged on their hands. So I wish that you could map out these controllers, and I hope that is something that Arcade1up will let us do in the future, maybe even on these legacy cabinets, because there is a USB-C port on the PCB. So in theory, we could be getting firmware upgrades through that, and we might even be able to see a different set of games. That's a lot less likely, but hey, the potential is there. In terms of the buttons, again, the button is white here. I'm not sure why that would be. Can't map them. And also there's no pause button. I really wish there was a way to pause the game, maybe by hitting 1 and 2 player buttons at the same time. I know that's not arcade real, but this isn't a real arcade game. It's a facsimile of an arcade game. And all the multi-cades, that is just the way things are going. It would be nice to be able to pause the game, a relatively minor quibble, but still. Are there any other suggestions I would have for Arcade1up on this game? And I would say, A, don't make it any smaller. I think it still has the wow, but I think if they try to shrink the dimensions any further, I think they'd be in trouble. Again, I don't think that they will, but I would say don't do that. Give us a red button here. And most importantly, I would say, other than the pause button, is maybe give us a little bit better variety of games. I don't need 6 Pac-Man games. I really only need 3. It would be nice if we had Bosconian on there. It'd be nice if we had Rally X or some other Namco game on there that wasn't so Pac-Man specific. 6 Pac-Man games, that's a lot of Pac-Man, but that's about it in terms of negativity. It really is a very nice package, and the game selection is much better than it has been before. One of the many small improvements to this Legacy cab is the fact that all of the games now are on one single screen as opposed to having to scroll through them. I think that this is a better solution, especially as now you have more games. To get into the menu system, you have to hit the second player button, and then it lets you pop right into the settings. Now, not all of the settings will be exactly the same. Some games have more control than others, but it is a super cool thing to have this. Once you have everything the way you need, you just hit the A button or the fire button and it goes back to the main menu. When you've decided to play a game, you can go ahead and you hit the A button again, and it gives you a little instruction as to how you can play the game. And of course, like all A1up games now, it will remember your high score. So what's my final review of the Arcade1up Legacy Pac-Man cab? Well, all things considered, I really would have to give this thing a solid A. There are some quibbles. I do wish that there were a pause button. I wish that we could map these controllers. And I do wish that it has Bosconian and maybe a couple of other games, but those are relatively minor quibbles. The fact is that the fit and finish on this game, the lit marquee, the cool looking riser, the inclusion of 12 games, the ability to change the pixel smoothing on or off, to change the difficulty, to add lives. Those are all very welcome additions to this game. In fact, I think that if you were looking at starting your home arcade, that you could do a lot worse than this unit. I think it is outstanding value for money, so I'm going to give this thing an A. If you like this kind of content, please give me a thumbs up on the way out the door. It really does help us love each other. And until next time, I'll see you guys in the Game Shack. Mwah! Man, I was really hoping for a better emulation than this from Arcade1up.
Be sure to visit evilgeniusentertainment.com for exclusive content, swag, casting call news, and much, much more.